in TV land. My name is Michael Gecht, and to my left is Bill McVey, and this is our new show. I was just talking to, hello, Bill, how are you today?
Very good, Michael.
Okay, well, I was just talking to Bill, and I think we need a name for the show.
I thought that since you cover quite a variety of topics, how about Speaking of Everything?
Yeah, well, you mentioned that was Howard Cosell's show, right?
Yes, his had been Speaking of Sports, and then it was changed to Speaking of Everything.
Well, I don't want to use the same name that he's using. What about something original like Mike and Bill?
How's that? That will work.
Or Bill and Mike.
Bill and Mike's is even better still.
Bill, why is that?
Well, humble as I am,
you want top billing, right?
Yes, top billing.
Why don't we just call it the Michael Gecht Show with Bill on the side? How's that?
Sounds like it's an a la carte.
Yeah. Okay. Well, all right. Well, I'll tell you what. Why don't the audience out there, you can write in to CTV, 100 Cable Way, if you have a good name for our show, and maybe you'll win a prize, or maybe not.
Wow.
Yeah. Anyway, what's the joke for today?
Well, this fellow had gone to visit his therapist, and he looked a little bit depressed, so the therapist picked up on it. He said, "You look a little down." He said, "I am a little down." So the therapist said, "What happened since our last session?" He said, "I was away on a business trip, and I knew I was going to be coming home early, so I called my wife, and I left a message on the phone. And when I got home, as I was walking through the house, I heard some scuffling coming from the bedroom. When I looked in, and my wife was in bed with a strange man. So that's why I looked down, and that's why I'm depressed." So the therapist said, "Well, I thought we've already approached and went through this subject about projecting and jumping to conclusions." The guy says, "Well, what are you talking about?" He says, "Well, have you considered maybe your wife didn't get the message?" That's it, Michael.
Okay.
I have to move on.
So what are you doing these days when you're not here in the studio?
Occasionally I do some community theater.
Okay. Are you in anything now? Or
no, I'm getting aged out.
That wouldn't be age discrimination or anything like that?
No, but they like to have age-compatible sets. And a lot of the young people that are coming out of Wagner College, before they reach their dreams of Broadway, they do community theater. And they want an age-compatible cast. And there's not that many roles for people around the 70 mark.
Okay. Many years ago, we used to have this guy, Clyde. Remember Clyde from the Seaview Theater? Seaview Playwrights Theater. Maybe that was before your time, but he was in every show. Guy couldn't act, but he was old. And anytime they needed an old man, he was there. So all you have to do is just wait a few more years, and we'll start calling you Clyde.
Well, if Clyde has passed on, I could probably fill his shoes.
Yeah, he has. Yeah, he can.
Yeah.
I'm a busy man. Every day it seems I'm more busy now than I've ever been. Okay, let me start. Mondays, I'm a bridge player, duplicate bridge in Staten Island. I'm a very big man, a big fish in a very, very small puddle. That's me when it comes to bridge. Go into Brooklyn, they know me. Some people know me in Manhattan, but that's about it. So Mondays I play bridge. Tuesdays I direct a bridge game at the Bridge Club of Staten Island. But Tuesday nights I go round dancing. You ever go round dancing?
Once.
Do you know what it is?
Yes, very confusing.
Well, why don't you tell us? What is round dancing? What's your...
It was a very confusing...
okay, well, do you know what square dancing is?
Yes, I do.
All right, square dancing, you have 8 people in a square, okay, and you have someone called a caller, and he calls the steps, circle left, circle right, Alamo left, right-hand star, all sorts of different calls. Okay, we've been doing that for many years, but in the last 3 years, we started going round dancing. Round dancing is a lot of fun. That's similar to ballroom dancing, but you have a your companion next to you, and we dance around the perimeter of the room. And we have not a caller, we have someone called a cuer. He teaches us the steps, and each dance is choreographed. So we started off with, and the nice thing is it's the popular dances, or the dances that used to be popular. We've done cha-cha, we've done rumba, we've done waltz, and now we're learning two steps. And this is nice stuff, but what I like is the music. A lot of music is the music of the 50s and the 60s, and that's a lot of fun. So what do? I play bridge, and I do square dancing, I do round dancing. Here we are at cable television, we do that, and there's a few other things that I do. So I have a pretty active life.
It's ironic that you should top this off with bridge, because you span a wide variety of interests.
Not to mention, I also do ukulele. Actually, it's called ukulele now. I used to call it ukulele, and now it's ukulele. So we have a Friday morning. So if anyone is interested in learning how to play the ukulele, and you're age appropriate, I think you have to be a senior citizen for that in order to get in. They're free lessons. So anyone interested, let us know. So anyway, what do you want to do? Let's bring on our first guest. How does that sound? Okay?
Let's go.
Okay, so anyway, with us today, we have a guest. His name is Ed Gecht, and he's sitting right over here. Hello, Ed. How are you?
Hey, Mike. Thanks for having me.
Hi, okay.
How do you do it?
And as you can see, Ed Gecht is an artist. What type of art do you do, Ed?
Pop art.
Okay, and I see we have two paintings here. Before we discuss the paintings, anything else you want to talk about? How you do this art? And
Well, these are primarily two examples of acrylic on canvas. I primarily work in acrylic. I start my paintings, I do little drawings in a sketchbook, very tiny, and then I blow them up big, and that's how I start.
Okay. How long have you been doing this?
This particular style, I first exhibited in 1999 at the New York City Art Expo.
Okay.
Took off from there.
Okay. Did you go to school for this? Did you go to special school?
Yeah, first I went to High School of Art and Design, and then I
Okay.
went on to college. I went to the School of Visual Arts in Manhattan also.
Okay. And let's see the first painting. This is the first
Well,
one here.
This one's called the Aviator. It's a little flying bird with the aviator goggles on. And this image kind of represents to soar and take height in anything that you do.
Okay. Nice. Do you make just one and you make copies of it, or?
Well, these are originals, but
Right.
there's usually variations on the theme where I'll do several paintings in the same
Okay.
theme, and then we'll have limited edition prints on canvas or paper of some of the images.
What do you think about this?
I like the whole concept of it, and take flight to where your dreams lead.
Okay. Is that an owl? Or what type
Well,
of
it's
bird
actually
is that?
just a generic Ed Heck bird.
Okay. Oh, we call it.
I make my own species.
Okay. And once again, what's the name of this painting?
It's called the Aviator.
The Aviator. Okay. Pretty nice. I noticed in the background there's just a regular blue background here.
Mm-hmm.
Nothing, no trees or anything.
No, well, he's up there really
Yeah,
high,
he's up
so
there
he's beyond the
flying
trees
up, yeah.
on a cloudless
Okay.
day.
Very nice. Okay. And the next one, am I in the way? I think I
No,
am.
it's just a couple of guys looking over you.
Not this way. Okay, go ahead, Ed. Tell
that-
us what you got. How's
That one's actually titled "You Looking at Me,"
Okay.
and it's a group of something else that I like to draw a lot as monsters or creatures.
Okay.
So it's just a little group of creatures looking in on you
They look like
and trying to figure you out.
Right. They look like sort of cartoon characters,
Yeah.
right? Cartoon characters. Well, I like the eyes.
I like friendly monsters.
Friendly monsters.
It looks like quite a quizzical expression
Yes.
that your creature in the middle has.
Yes. Well, as you're looking at them, they're looking at you, trying to figure you out.
Yeah. What are the names of these?
Well, that was the title is "You Looking at Me."
You looking at me.
Little De Niro in there.
Okay. Hey, you looking at me? Yeah.
Yo.
I like that. Very nice. Any comments on this?
I like it. I
Do you
like it.
think it would win a prize or anything?
Well, I would give it a good rating.
Yes. Pretty nice. Which one do you like better?
I think the bird taking flight,
The bird, the aviator.
the aviator.
Aviator, huh? In flight. Okay. And you don't have to frame these because they're already in. You just put them right on the wall,
Yeah, these are
I
called
guess, right?
the thicker canvases are called gallery wrap, and you don't have to. You can frame them usually to do them like in a. It's called a floating frame where it'll leave a little space so you can see the edges. Because I usually paint around all the edges of my painting, so
Okay.
you can just hang them on a wall without a frame.
And what type of paint do you use?
Acrylic paint.
Okay. You ever do any painting, Bill?
A garage once.
Oh, okay. When I
Took
was
me
a
3
kid,
days.
I remember my mother used to give me this painting. You had numbers on there, so you just match up the
Paint by
paint with
numbers,
the numbers,
yes.
painting by numbers. It's pretty good, you know.
I think everybody starts out that way.
Did
After your
you
first set of
start-
Crayolas, yeah,
Right,
I've
did
done
you
paint by
start
numbers
that
when I
way?
was a kid. Yeah.
I was a little dyslexic, so the paint by numbers, you know.
Well, you just go
came
your
a
own way
little
then.
muddled.
All right.
I particularly like the aviator because it's got a lot of different possibilities with the expression that the eyes bring out.
Well, Bill, after the show, he's just going to give it to you.
Well,
I don't think so.
I guess not.
All right, but you also have some smaller paintings, right?
Yeah, actually, I have. I've been doing a project the last couple of years called Random Acts of Art, and what that is, I usually take either prints or some originals, and I will leave them in different locales, all over the city, or actually I exhibit all over the world. So wherever I am traveling to, I'll leave a piece of art,
Okay.
for people to find, and then they put it up on social media, and I have usually stickers on the back. And it just has the Random Acts of Art logo.
Okay.
And it says free art, and it says, please take this free piece of art with my compliments and enjoy it. All I ask that you do in return is pass it on with your own random act of kindness. So it's a little, theme
really
on the
nice.
random act of kindness theme, and just hoping that it'll be a little ripple effect and spread out and people do nice things. And now this project, which I'm going to officially launch on Valentine's Day this year, on February 18th. And this is a part of Random Acts of Art, but it's called Take Heart. And these are original 8x8 canvases of hearts, and I'm doing many of
This
them.
one is nice for Valentine's Day. It has that red in it.
So what I'm going to do is these I'll be leaving in different locales all over, and also I give them to people in person. And my goal for the year 2018 is to do 1,000 hearts and give away 1,000 hearts.
Wow.
And so far, I think I have 250 odd ones already painted and going, and I'm going to continue. And actually, I have enough that I'm actually going to make you guys part of the project today, and you guys can pick a heart that you want. So I have lots of other colors here, depending on your mood, or if you want to keep them for yourself,
nice,
or you
huh?
can give them to someone else also.
Right. How does it look
Yes.
this way? No. Paul?
They could go anyway.
What could you call this?
I
if it
like
was
the one with
upside
the
down?
orange background.
Yeah.
That one's for,
I like
Thank
this
you.
one.
all right, that one's
This one
yours.
right over here. I'm going to hang this up in my gallery at home, okay? And people ask where I got it from, and I could say it came from good old Ed Heck, Very nice. Well, thank you, Ed.
Thank you.
I like this, okay? How does it look this way now?
Yeah, I'm hoping with everything going on in the world, I'm hoping to spread a little bit of happiness and a little smile, and hopefully that people will keep doing it.
The world could always
pass it
use
on.
more happiness.
Yes.
This is nice. I like it. Do we have a name for these little
Well, they're all just called Take Heart. And
take heart, huh?
so a little
Take
play on
heart
words
in
there.
red.
Take heart and art in the word, heart. and
Okay, nothing
art.
with heck in it, huh?
No.
Take heart, what the heck?
Heck is on every
That's
one
it.
of them. So
That's it, your name, what the heck?
Creativity combats negativism. and
Yes.
violence.
Yeah.
And you're a creative kind of guy, Ed.
I try.
All right, anything else you want to tell us?
That's my main project for this year. I'll be traveling again
Right.
to exhibiting in Germany in the spring, and then I'll be also on some cruise ships in Europe, the AIDA cruise ships.
Okay. Did they hire you for this, or are
well,
you just going to be on the ship?
I don't know if you're aware that on cruise ships they have art galleries, and they
Yes.
sell. I mean, it's a great thing because
Right.
you have a captive audience, you know, of
Yeah.
well-to-do
Very.
people.
That's right.
On ships, and then when they're not in port, you know, they have different events in them. So
Where
I'll
they're
go
not
on
looking
and
at-
do a
yeah.
meet and greet, and then they have art auctions, and then the galleries there, you know, all the time.
Normally, that auction is right before a meal or right after a meal.
Well, right after they serve lots of drinks,
Yes.
usually.
Yeah. Is that
Lubricate
it?
the wallets.
Okay. And they have. I've been on plenty of cruise ships. They're always having those art. My wife goes to them. You know, all the time. I said, "You're going to spend so much time on a cruise ship, you know, and just look at." All right, whatever.
Ed, I wanted
Yeah.
to ask you, when do you start on a project? Do you get your ideas on spur of the moment for which direction you're going to go in, or do you just, you know, play with the sketch pad and see what flops out?
It happens all different ways, but like I said before, where I get my drawings from, I keep sketchbooks, which is one of the best pieces of advice I got from a teacher in college about keeping a sketchbook with you at all times, because, you know, during the day you get inspired by so many things you hear, things you see, and, you know, most of the time I'm sure I have at least 10 brilliant ideas a day, and if I didn't keep anything, by the time I get home they've all fallen out of my head. So
Okay.
keep a sketchbook, and I do hundreds, thousands of these little drawings in these sketchbooks, and then I'll go back later and pick out, you know, one, that'll make a good painting, and I'll use that, you know, I'll blow up that.
Do you ever
drawing.
take pictures of something and then?
Actually, in this I'll try not to. I mean, I used to, in another life, I worked for the American Museum of Natural History for 17 years, and I did scientific illustration where I did very detailed drawings of fossils and bone material, you know, prehistoric dinosaurs and mammals, and that. So that was always done with a lot of research and a lot of, you know, material to look at, to do. So with this stuff, I try to break it down to the simplest form. So if I look at a photograph, I'll put in too much information. So I just try to get the essence of something and, you know, what I think something looked like from my head. So I don't like to look at anything when I'm working.
How long does it take you to do one of these?
Well, one of these is probably a couple hours because, like when I work on paintings, I'll usually work on at least 10 at a time in my studio. I have, you know, a whole bunch of easels set up, and I'll work because each color has several coats to get, you know, a nice even finish. So while one's drying, I move on to the next, to the next, to the next, and then back.
Okay.
And also with these, I probably work on about 20, 25 at a time, doing backgrounds and foregrounds and back and forth, and then I do the
Okay.
black line last on all of them.
I see. And one of these, the Aviator, and
Yeah, I mean, they probably take about 3, 4, 5 days a piece, depending on the size and complexity of them. Like I said, I'll be
Nice.
working on a whole bunch of them, so.
pretty good. Well, folks, you've seen it right here on the Michael Gecht Show.
Well, I guess Bill has been really pushed to the side.
The Mike and Bill Show, the Bill and Mike Show.
Oh, no, try to make nice now. It's too late.
All right, Ed, we enjoyed you and
Thanks
being
for
on the
having-
show. And
I was happy to be on the Bill and Mike Excellent
Bill and
Adventure
Mike.
Show.
Excellent. Thank you.
Thank you, Mike.
Okay.
Thank you, Ed.
Don't take your love away from me. Don't you in the heart of misery. If you go down, breaking up is hard to do. Remember when there'll be time, and you kiss me all through the night. And we go breaking up is hard to do. They say that breaking up is hard to do. Now I know that it's true. Don't say that this is the end. Instead of breaking up, I wish that we were making up again. I beg your down, really get down, down. I'm down, really get down, down. I'm down, really get down, down.
again. My name is Michael Gecht, and over here is Bill McVey. How you doing, Bill?
Very good, Michael. Glad to be
Okay.
in your presence again.
Yes, it hasn't been too long, has it?
No, and the road to greatness is a very lonely road, traveled only by great people such as yourself.
Okay, any more jokes? Another joke for this segment?
I can't think of anything offhand because I'm very tired. I kept on having that recurring nightmare, and I didn't get much sleep.
I see. Why don't you tell us about this nightmare that you're having?
Well, I keep on dreaming that I'm a muffler, and I wake up exhausted.
Okay. I get it. Okay. Pretty good. Anyway, so we have another guest with us, and let's introduce him. Do you want me to introduce him, or would you like to introduce him? His name, ladies and gentlemen, give a big round of applause for Frank Merlino. Hello, Frank. How are
you doing?
Okay.
How do you do,
Say-
Frank?
Look at that face. Does that face look familiar? There we go. Frank, you've been in some movies on television. What have you been doing? Have you been in movies?
Yeah, recently the other day in The Irishman, and
Yeah.
I go back Sunday, but just as an extra background.
An extra, but you have that face. That
Yeah, I used to. People would always come over to me when I would be in the city eating, and or they stare at me. Oh, you look like De Niro. And I go, yeah, right. I'm his brother.
you give autographs? No autographs.
No autographs.
No. Frank De Niro.
Yeah, it sounds
You
good.
could put that down,
Yeah.
Frank De Niro. All right, look. So anyway, you have an interesting story that you're going to tell us about, right?
Yeah, it's back in 1973.
1973. Wow. Okay. And where were you in 1973?
Living in Brooklyn, working at American Airlines.
Okay.
And I was married for 3 years, got married in 1970. My wife Joan was the fourth of 11, and I'm the last of 11, so we had a match there.
They always had those big families, especially in Brooklyn.
Yeah.
11 children.
Yeah, I was 3 years old before I saw 5 of my brothers. 5 of them served in World War II. 2 landed on Normandy on D-Day. And another brother was in the Korean War, and another brother peacetime. 3 nephews in Vietnam, because my nephews, one is 3 months older than me, and 2 younger. Just a couple of years younger, that's it. So
13. You have enough for a basketball, a football game?
yeah, we
Wow.
would.
Yeah.
I had 35 at that time, nieces and nephews. Christmas time, New Year's, Thanksgiving, Easter, it was all at the house in Brooklyn.
Yeah.
My mother I lost my father when I was 15.
Okay.
My mother just right after I got married. I was 29.
How old was your father
He was
when he passed on?
67. He was born 1890.
Okay.
My mother was 74. They were both born on the same island, Lipare, off of Sicily.
Wow.
My father came in 1907. My mother came at 16 after that. Her 4 brothers sent for her.
Well, it's good that he, at least he lived until 60. In 1973, that was a nice age,
No, he passed away in 57. I was in junior high school.
57. Okay.
He was born 1890.
Okay. Had he lived longer, you could have had 15 brothers.
Yeah, well, my
he still
mother-
had time.
My mother was 47. My father was 52. So,
Okay.
and he made wine, so that kept him going.
Wow, just
Frank, what was the age span in your siblings?
Well, I was the longest span. I was 7 years from my sister. All the rest were a year and a half, 2 years. A boy, 2 girls, and then all boys, then a girl and me. My sister was like my babysitter. She was 7 when I was born.
Wow. So from the youngest to the oldest was how many years?
Oh, man. I can't,
those are the type of questions they ask when the doctor's going to perform a surgical procedure on you, and he wants you to get distracted, Oh, what's the difference between the youngest and the oldest,
My brother would have probably, if he was born, let's say, around 1915, and So when I was born in 42, so
Right.
that's the difference of the oldest age.
Wow.
Yeah. But all of them were 1.5 to 2 years apart.
They just kept going and
Yeah.
going, you know?
Well, back
yeah.
then there was no
Back then,
no TV.
you know, if you were, yeah, old age is not what it was, you know, now. Now, you know, people live into their 80s, their 90s very comfortably. They got
Yeah.
a good quality of health. But back then, you know, I was recently watching on my TV. They have some of the oldie shows like The Real McCoys. You remember The Real McCoys with
Sure.
Walter Brennan?
Yeah.
Grandpappy Amos, the head
Right.
of the family,
Yeah.
rose like a lion, but as gentle as a lamb. And ain't it his Luke who sings with joy, 'cause he makes cake, Mrs. Luke McCoy.
There you go. Okay. Anyway, I'm watching a show. I was watching The Real McCoys, I think, a few weeks ago, and there's a problem. There's a problem. The chickens aren't laying eggs on the farm. Okay. Now, Amos McCoy says, "What am I going to do?" You know why? Because the planes are flying over the farm, and they're making noise, and the chickens aren't laying eggs. Okay. So what do we do? He says, Amos, he decides to break into the Air Force base, okay? He gets caught into the Air Force base, and they catch him. What's your name? My name is Amos McCoy. How old are you? Oh, I'm 65 years old. 65 years old? That's nothing these days. 60. When I was a kid, 65 years. I thought he was near death. 65 years. You ever watch the Godfather 2?
Yes.
Okay, Godfather 2. Remember Godfather 2, where the Godfather almost gets assassinated, right? Who does it? Later on, he figures who is. It's Hyman Roth. We got to get Hyman Roth. That's the key. We got to kill Hyman Roth, okay? Later on, there's a scene. He's in Cuba. Hyman Roth is right here, and it's his birthday. They bring out a birthday cake, and just for an instant, he's 66 years old. Old man Roth. We got to kill old man 66. So what I'm saying is,
Right.
you know, 65 and 66 years ago, you were an
was
old
old.
man. Now, you know, now it's nothing.
Well, I'm 75.
Yeah. Okay.
Yes, but you
Yes.
got the body of a 74-year-old.
Oh,
Yes.
thanks, sir. That's good.
So anyway, why don't you tell us your story and let's hear it.
Well, we were married in 1970, and then we found out my wife couldn't have children.
Okay.
She had endometriosis. So at that time, I wrote to Vietnam. Vietnam was falling. That was 73. And I knew there was a lot of orphanages there.
Okay.
You know,
One second. There was no orphanages here. No.
Yeah, there was, but yeah, we tried to adopt here, but it was in the thousands. And at that time, I was making good pay. It was about $18,000 a year with American, but there was no way we could afford, you know, that much money. So I went to work, and one of the kids, I was on the night shift, come over, seen I was sitting there, and I was like depressed. And he says, "Molina, what's the matter?" And I tell him the story. So he says, "Well, why don't you go to Korea?" I said, "What's in Korea?" He says, 35,000 American troops. There's got to be kids there, you know.
Yeah, I would think so. Right?
So he says, my wife's Korean, and my brother-in-law is a Korean CIA colonel. He says, I'm going to call him, see if he can help. The next night he comes to work. He says, my brother-in-law will help you. So I tell my wife. My wife says, she's not going. You go. I want a baby girl. And she told me later on that she didn't believe I wanted to adopt. You know, I kept saying, let's keep trying, let's keep trying. And she told me later that if I came home with nothing, then she would have figured I didn't want to adopt. So American Airlines, we used to do Korean Airlines. We used to work on Korean. They didn't have a terminal. So to fly to Korean was about $50 each way. The hotel in Korea, the Chosun Hotel, which was their #1 hotel, was owned by American Airlines when they had all the Americana hotels. So that was, the room was $20 a night for a suite.
So for $70, room and board.
Right.
Wow.
I went there.
Yeah.
It was August 74. When I got there, I called the colonel, because my friend gave me the number. And he says, stay in your room, I'll be there tomorrow. The next day, there was just a knock on the door. Nobody called. I opened the door. He come in. Everything is you bow. They give a card. I didn't have cards, you know. And he introduced the next man. He said, "This is Mr. Jinna Kim, Vice President of the Bank of Korea." And then there were two other guys, and I said, "Come on in." And he said, "No, they'll stay out there." They were his bodyguards. So when we were talking, he told me, he says, "Mr. Kim will take you around to orphanages, you know, and this way you could see." And then we went out to lunch. The next day, I get a call in the morning. It's Mr. Kim. He says, "I'm here," you know. So I went down. We go outside, and there's a black Mercedes with a driver. Here I am, a kid from Brooklyn. I got a CIA colonel and a vice president of the Bank of Korea.
And how old were you then?
34.
Okay.
Well, yeah. No, I was younger than 34. This was 1974. So, because I was 35 when I went in the Army in 77. But anyway, he was driving me around to orphanages. But the kids were all bigger kids. But each orphanage you go through, you meet with the head person. You have everything is tea. You have a cup of tea, and then they ask you to walk through the orphanage. And all the kids are lined up, and you just walk through, and your heart comes out of you just looking at the kids all standing there. About the third day, we had gone to maybe about 5 orphanages. So he says, "Tomorrow I'm going to take you to the Children's Hospital in Seoul." All night long, I can't sleep wondering, what's wrong with the kids? Why is he taking me to
Yeah,
a hospital?
hospital, right? You would
Yeah.
think an orphanage, right?
Right.
Yeah.
So the next morning, we go to the hospital. We have tea with the head nurse. And then Mr. Kim says, "Okay, you want to go up and pick your baby." Now, at that time, if you remember back, people would wait at the airport, plane would come in, the door would open up, the stewardess would come out with a baby, and the people were there to get it. I'm doing everything different. I'm in Korea. So all the nurses came up to watch, you know, what you're doing, what's this guy? So they open the door, and it's all cribs. And now I'm thinking, what the heck are these people going to think of me? You know, if I start lifting the blankets to see if the kids are okay. So I says, "Listen, you have something a little older walking around?" So they took me to another ward. They opened the door, and it's about 30 2-year-olds to 4-year-olds.
This is not like picking out a puppy
Well,
or anything, you know?
It's almost like that. Because this isn't the way it was done. They were taking me there for something that's not done this way.
Okay.
And so when I go in, I'm looking at all these kids. Now you want to just put your arms out and say, "I'll take these," you know.
I'll take them all.
So they had put 2 boys and 2 girls on the table, and Mr. Kim says all their paperwork is done. In other words, they're ready to be adopted. So I says, "Well, we want a girl." So they took the 2 boys away. Now I'm thinking, how do I pick? You know, eeny, meeny, miny, mo. You know, how am I going to pick? So one was crying like crazy. The other one kept looking up, looking away, looking up and looking away. So I says, "Okay, I'll take her." In my mind, this is how much I knew about the whole thing. I think I'm taking her home the next day, right? My wife's going to be at the airport. I have a baby. I don't know nothing about immigration, anything. So while they put pajamas
So you just
on her.
pay, you leave a deposit, you know?
No, nobody talked about money. That's the whole thing. Nobody
You buy a
said
little
anything.
leash, a collar, you know, you take the kid home. I don't think so, right?
Well, when they put pajamas on her, and this was the first pictures I took of my daughter.
This is, wow, can you get it in there? Okay. These are so this is the day that
That's
you
the
met,
day
you
they
met
put
your
pajamas on
daughter.
her. Right.
Wow.
Her name was Young Suk Kim.
Young Soo Kim.
Right. That was her
Okay.
Korean name.
Yeah.
So, while I'm there and I got all these thoughts in my mind, the head nurse calls Korean Social Services, and she hands me the phone. And the man says, "Could I help you?" I says, "Yeah, I'm here. I just picked the baby. I'm going to take her home." He says, "Have you had a home study?" I said, "What's that?" As soon as they said that, he said, "You can't be here. You have no papers, no paperwork." He says, "It's illegal to even be in the hospital. You could be arrested." Now my face drops. Mr. Kim says, "What's the problem?" I says, "He told me I can't have the baby." He says, "Give me the phone." Now at the time, the government was a military government in Korea, in South
Right,
Korea.
yeah.
So the colonel had a lot of power. Plus, he used to interrogate North Korean spies. That was his official duties. Mr. Kim got on the phone, and every other word was, Colonel Ko. You know, Colonel Ko, Colonel Ko. And he hands me the phone.
I guess they're talking
Korean,
Korean,
yeah.
right?
So, but that's all I could hear was
Yeah.
Colonel Ko. And he hands me the phone back, and the guy says, "Okay, this is what you have to do. We'll put the baby in foster care," which was an older woman that would take care of her until everything was settled. He says, "You have to go home." He says, "Go to Travelers Aid International. They'll translate all the documents we give you to English, and then they'll transfer the paperwork you have into Korean." So I left Korea, said goodbye to Mr. Kim. Mr. Kim says he'll keep visiting my daughter, Young-suk, and he'll send pictures home, which he did. These are pictures he would send to us. And that's kept us, with letters. He wrote English and everything. So, turned around, I come home, went to Travelers Aid International. The woman there says, "This will translate all the documents, it's $400. Fine, no problem. Then we had to go to New York Social Services because I lived in Brooklyn, and it was a Miss Hecht there. And she looked at all the papers, says, "You know what this is going to cost you?" And I'm thinking, well, everything is money. She goes, "Nothing, because you have all the paperwork."
Okay.
She come to the house, and we passed that. We did the FBI fingerprints and all. Then we kept waiting to get the paperwork. And one Monday morning, a knock on the door, and it was Western Union with an I-600, which means now we could go to Korea. It was about 9 months. We went to Korea May 2nd. Met Mr. Kim. He took us to the social services, and my daughter was there. And my wife was holding her and everything. She was like in another world. And I said, dopey me, I said, "When do we have to have her back?" Oh, and they said, I thought they were giving her to us for the day.
Right.
So they said, no, tomorrow you'll have all her documents, So Mr. Kim drove us back to the hotel, and we spent a couple of days with my daughter in Korea, went around.
How old is she then?
She was 4. She was born in March, and we were there in May.
Did she speak English at all?
No.
Okay.
No, everything was,
Yeah.
as long as you showed her food, that was it. She cried like crazy when my wife took her into the bathroom, and she flushed the toilet. Their toilets are on the floor. Water just flowed.
Right, yeah.
And she started crying. She didn't know when she heard the toilet flushing. We came home May 10th, Mother's Day. So that was the thing. Our whole family met us and all. A couple of months later, a person told me, "Why don't you join the Republican Club?" I was a Democrat. She says, because it was close to where I lived, and the guy there was a lawyer. So I went there, I joined, I did work for them, and I asked him about could he do an adoption for my daughter? He said, "Yeah, $300, which was pretty good."
Oh, I thought you had your daughter at that time.
No, but she wasn't completely adopted. Still had to go through the adoption. In other words, he got us to see a judge who did the adoption and took a picture with my daughter, with his arms around her on the desk. The next thing was we had to go she became a citizen. So me and my wife went into the city with her, and we swore. That's when I went into like a little depression. I thought, Korea's giving me a baby. I never did nothing for Korea. United States is making her a citizen. I was never in the service. I was sole support of my mother, so I was 3A.
Oh, okay.
So I talked to my wife, and she says, whatever you want to do, you could do. So I went to work, and the union guy come to me, and he says, listen, if you go in the service, all your time counts. So your seniority continues, your pay raises continues, everything. When you come back 3 years or 4 years, you have all that time added on. So 2 days before my 35th birthday, I was in Fort Dix going through basic training. And I had stopped smoking and everything to do all that. I was sent to Korea about 3 months later, and my wife was going to come.
Okay.
While I was there, I showed a girl.
Bring the child.
Yeah, yeah, because I wasn't command sponsored, but we were going to live. I was going to live off base and all. While I was there, I showed pictures of my daughter and my wife to one of the girls that worked in the club there, and she says, "Oh, when your daughter comes, could I show her around?" So I said, "Yeah, of course. At least somebody speaks English, Korean." So we came. She came to the house, was taking my daughter around.
This is how long after? 2 years?
No, well, we brought her home in 75, and I went into service in 77.
Okay.
That was October
So
77.
she's there 2 years now.
Yeah.
So she's about 6 years
Yeah,
old.
she speaks English and everything. And we entered her in Catholic school in Korea because we couldn't get her on the Army-based school because I wasn't command-sponsored.
Right.
They have this difference. So this girl would take my daughter, out to places. 2 weeks later, she asked me if we would take her sister's daughter. And I'm thinking, that's your sister's daughter. But at that time, no father, no future. The kids could only go to middle school. So at 15, you're out working, no high school.
Yeah.
So we started the paperwork on her. And went to the agency because I had a good rapport with social services. But the guys at American would load an igloo, which they call an igloo, where you put your bags and it would go in the belly of the plane. They would throw toys, clothes, everything in it. And about every 2 months, it would come to Korea. Customs would call me. I go to my colonel, get a Jeep, go down, pick it up, call social services, and she'd tell me, what orphanages could use it, and I'd deliver it. So I had a good rapport with social services. About 3 months later, my wife gets pregnant.
Wow.
Yes, so she's on top of the world because
Wait,
now.
so you got the 6-year-old, right?
Right, and
the other one.
She's a year and a half. Not
Okay,
even-
a year and a half. Your wife gets
This
pregnant.
time.
That's number 3. You got 10 more to go.
Right. But she's a year and a half. So now my wife gets pregnant, but 4 months later she loses the baby.
Oh, okay.
And she goes into a bad depression because now she's 36, finally got pregnant where they told her she couldn't. So the doctors at the 121 hospital said, you have to send her home. She's living off base. She's only speaking to Korean people. She can't talk to them. My wife didn't speak Korean.
Right.
So we had to send her home. The baby, I'm out in the field all the time, so I had to give the baby back to the mother. The girl, my second girl, my daughter, Kira.
Okay.
So now my wife's in the States. About 5 months later, she writes to me and says, I'm coming back. Could you find Young? That was her name. My other daughter used to call her Onion. So I couldn't tell her, how am I going to find her? The girl I knew married a GI, went to the States.
Yeah.
No forwarding addresses. How am I going to find her? But I was afraid to tell her I couldn't find her. So I didn't say nothing. I figured, well, when she gets here, I'll tell her. So I used to teach conversation English for extra money. And I'm walking down to the main street. I'm in uniform. And I said, I'll call from the phone, call my students. I put money in the phone, and a stroller comes around the corner with a girl pushing it. And it looked like the same stroller we had, but anybody could buy it in the PX and black market it.
Yeah.
But the girl pushing it wasn't the mother. So something was telling me, check it out, no, yes, no, and I hung up the phone, and I'm walking along the stroller, and the girl thinks I'm a nut because, I'm in uniform. She starts walking fast. I'm looking for a triangle birthmark that my daughter had. She's going fast. I'm trying to keep up, and then I just blurted out, Young Esau? Is this Young? And she turns around and goes, Frank? And it takes me to a room where they were staying. She left me there with the baby, went and got the mother. The mother says, do you still want the baby? You know, we're talking.
It's not the mother, it's the aunt, right?
No, the aunt went to the States,
Okay.
married a GI. That's why I said I couldn't, how was I going to know where she lived? This
Okay.
is all just happened. I said, yeah, she's coming September 4th. By September 9th, she came to the house with the baby, and that's my second daughter. While we
Okay,
were
but let me get this straight. Onion, she had a mother,
yeah,
but the mother wanted to give up her child
Right.
to have a better life in America.
right, because
Wow.
in that country at that time, remember this is like the late 70s. Koreans didn't adopt. They a lot of things. If you didn't have a father, you were like the United States back in the 20s used to stamp your birth certificate illegitimate, and people couldn't get jobs and stuff like that. So the same thing over there. At 15, you left middle school, which is junior high school, and you went out to work, clubs, bars, wherever, factories and all that.
Right. How old was Onion at the time?
At that time, when we got her, she was about a year and a half. When I found her on the street. When we first got her, she was a year. A year and a half later, 6 months later, by the time my wife come back, her hair was long. That's why I couldn't recognize her right away. So now my wife's back. We got the baby. The paperwork, we never stopped with social services, so that continued. My wife said she felt she lost a boy. So I called the agency, and I said, "Is there any chance we could get a boy?" And since I had the good rapport, they turned around and they gave me my son. He was 3 months old. He was born March. So March, this was like June when we got him. And this is 1980.
Okay.
So in November, and this is, this is my wife with the three of them.
Wow.
And that's the housekeeper that we had, would carry my son on her back while she did things.
So that's number 3.
Yeah. This was later on when we come home. That's my wife and my 3 kids.
Wow.
Yeah.
Well, you're a good-looking guy there, Frank.
My wife was way better. When we got my son, and in November of 1980, I used to argue with the military because anybody married a Korean couldn't go into the commissary to shop because there was so much black marketing going on. So I started writing letters and everything, and a guy a reporter from Japan in the Navy came and interviewed me, and they did a centerfold in Stars and Stripes, and he took my whole family.
Wow.
Wow.
Yeah.
Military family finds life in Korea a struggle.
Right, because the argument was that we couldn't. In other words, my wife couldn't shop. The only way she got to shop, she could shop in a PX because she worked on the base, but she couldn't go in the commissary. And I thought that was discriminatory because if you're married to a Korean girl, they wouldn't allow you in the commissary, yet anybody else could go in the commissary. And when you joined the Army, they said you have PX privileges, commissary
That
privileges.
is discrimination,
Right.
sure.
So I started everything. So they did that. This was November, and just before my wife went home, my niece contacted me. She had a boy who's my great nephew. He's a Special Forces, Special Ops. He graduated West Point. He was blown up in the Philippines, all scarred up, but he speaks 3 dialects of that Fauci, so they kept him in. He's the type, they grow the beards like the SEALs, goes behind the lines and everything. He's still in. He's a lieutenant colonel now. So she said, Uncle Frank, I can't have any more kids. Could you get me a baby girl? I'll start the paperwork. I called social services and asked them if they could do that. They turned around, and just before my wife and the kids, they went home December 2nd, 1980. I was still had to finish my time there. So when I finished in May of 81, I went and picked up social service gave me my great niece. And I brought her home. And I was the guy coming out of the airplane with the baby. She was a baby then. There's a bigger picture. She was 3 months old. And I was the guy coming out of the plane. My nieces, nephews, all the family was out there waiting for, to get us. My great niece now is a PhD child psychologist. She has 2 kids of her own, married and everything. So what she would have had in Korea at 15 years old working in places, she has a good life now. Yes, they live in Florida.
Fantastic life.
You refer to her as Dr. Frank.
She turned around, she says, Uncle Frank, you got to call me Dr. Carrie. I says, Carrie, I'll bring you back to Korea and drop you off. But she's good.
What happened to the mother of Onion or whatever her name is? Onyang.
Who became Kira Ann. My oldest daughter's called Cammie Joan. My wife was Joan Ann. And my second daughter is Kira.
Kira. And the first?
Is Cammie. Kami, Kira.
Okay.
And my son is Francis, Lonnie Francis. So he's got my name.
Right.
Each one of my daughter has my wife's middle name and her second part of her first name, and my son has my first name as his middle name. Do any
of them remember anything about Korea?
No. Well, I brought them back in 2016, and this is a picture before with Mr. Kim holding my daughter in that would be 74, and the other one is 2016. We stayed friends all these years, Christmas cards, and he was 84 then. I took them back.
Wow.
And my 3 kids, when I told them, I said, without Mr. Kim, I wouldn't have any of you, because by him getting the telephone, he opened the door to the first daughter. While I was in the service, I got the other ones. But I would have never done anything if I never got my first daughter. So that's, and this is, it's about what they look now.
Beautiful.
Wow.
My son, they all do good. This is my grandkids. I have 4 grandkids from my middle daughter.
Right. What happened to the mother? Remember the second one?
Yeah, that's the only one I know of that I met the mother. The other ones we didn't.
Okay.
My daughter, like you asked the question, did they have, the parent? My daughter, when my wife got to Korea, they were walking down the street, and my wife told my daughter, she says, Cammie, any one of these women could be your mother. And she says, no, you're my mommy. Yeah. And that they never asked.
They never, no search or anything.
No, they never thought about it, And
wow.
I told them the story. So, and it's funny, people, when you're adopted and all, and they're not the same as you, but they're foolish. They ask, are you going to tell your kids that they're adopted? Because a lot of people don't. I said, no, I'll wait till they look in the mirror.
Yeah.
And the other, you're laughing. The other question was, are you going to, and this, you got to remember, we lived in Brooklyn, in Bensonhurst. Are you going to let your daughter go out with a black guy? I says, no, I ain't going to let her go out with a white guy. He said, what do you mean? I said, how could I tell my daughter, who's Asian, that she can't go out with someone else? She'd look at me and say, what are you doing with me? So that's and it's I mean, sometimes I think
it's very emotional, you know.
Well, I didn't go to college. When my wife got sick, my wife passed away in 2000. But when she got sick, it was mental health, and she always had trouble with it, and she was chemical depressant, so her chemicals would change. The medicines. Back then, there was no insurance for mental health. That was it. Insurance companies did not cover you. The drugs was like 50%, right? But the drugs were in the 400s, 500s. And if it changed in the middle of a month, you had to get different pills. So everything come out of my pocket. So I started pulling my retirement money out. And then I took a mortgage on my house. which was down to like 29. I put 100,000 on top. So I paid everybody, doctors, psychiatrists, and I got angry with psychiatrists that I took her to a psychiatrist once, and 15 minutes later she come out, and I says, "Oh, I guess he wasn't there." She says, "No, he only just asked me how I'm feeling, my medicine and stuff." I says, "Well, who do you talk to?" She says, "The therapist," which you only got 5 visits under the insurance with a therapist. Until I forgot what vice president's wife, I think it was under the first Bush, she come out and said that she suffered from mental health. Then Rod Steiger come out, all the actors who were suffering from it. And then the insurance company started covering. But by then I already pulled it. So my kids never went to college. We couldn't afford it. My son now, he owns his own tech company in the city, has about 28 companies that he takes care of. My oldest daughter has been with Liberty Mutual. She runs a department in that. My middle daughter, who has my 4 grandchildren, she does exercises and trains people. As a matter of fact, one of the Zeldin's wife was one of her customers, and she volunteers at the senior citizen places to get the people up and dancing. So they're all doing good. But I had gone into depression one time because I couldn't do nothing if I felt like it. I didn't go to college. I didn't get them to college. I lost my wife in 2000, so I felt I never accomplished anything. And then people said, "What are you talking about?"
Of course, yeah. You have to see that. You've led a full life, you know, and you gave a nice life to these people that they would never have.
Well, now I enjoy acting. I retired from American. As a matter of fact, I worked at MacArthur Airport, which was right by my house. So I used to take my bicycle to work. I worked the night shift, which the last crew that was done, then it was me and the security guard, because Islip closes up. MacArthur closes up at 11 o'clock. And then in the morning, the crew would come in.
Okay.
But,
do you still have a mortgage?
Yeah.
Yeah.
But you
Maybe
know
you
what?
want to pay it off there, Bill.
Nah,
Yeah.
I work. I work on the side. I enjoy working. Right. I do. I used to have a landscaping thing, but when my wife passed away, like I just gave up everything. But now I work at the Hamptons. I do
Great.
people's yards.
Right. Well, Frank, I want to thank you for coming on our show. I'm enlightened by what you did. What do you think, Bill?
I think you've had a very enriching life and
Very.
experience that very few people have that get a chance to mix cultures.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, you don't look at them.
You're the man.
As they're different, you know. The kids, they're the same as you.
And they enrich your life.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. Anyway, I want to. It's time to close. I want to thank everyone for watching today. I had a nice time. You too, Bill? And
Always.
Frank, yeah. And we'll see you again. All right. Thank you.